fires
All right,
on.
it is
just to help.
6:02. I call this meeting to order.
But
Mic
I
check.
guess I can see. all
Is Mike,
this.
Mike even working?
Oh, do I have
Mine's
to
work.
behave?
Check, check.
Check, check.
Mine's
Do
all
I have to
scratchy.
behave tonight?
5. You're 5?
Number one?
Always, always number one.
Okay. so
Okay,
try
mic
it.
check. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Maybe I just can't hear myself. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Al, get your thing on.
Try it again.
Mic check.
Mine.
Mic check.
Check, check. This meeting's going
Can you turn?
great to start.
Oh, here, they've got the whole mics down. That's why.
Knock, knock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Check, check. We're good.
Check.
Can you
Oh,
turn that
check.
down a little?
Yeah, I got to
Thank
turn
you,
everyone
Connie.
down a little bit. Now that we turned everybody up.
They had everyone's personal volume up, but then the microphones down. So now we gotta,
I'm going to move everyone
Echo.
Yep.
individually down.
oh, fun.
All right. I'll go there.
All right, one more round of checks. No, I sound good? Okay, all right. So 6:02, meeting to order. Let's start with the flag salute. Go ahead and lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and then next up is roll call. Commissioner Boyle,
Here.
Commissioner Whalen,
Here.
Commissioner Sweat,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Elmstead, do we announce now or later? Not present. Vice Chair Oler, here, and Chair Elliott, here. Any additions, deletions, corrections to the agenda tonight? I will make just a quick comment that item 6C is as time is available, just depending on how long 6A or 6B go. If we don't get to it tonight, we'll cover it next meeting. All right, and then moving into citizen participation. Hello, any comments from the crowd? All right. Then we will move forward to approval of minutes. Any discussion when it comes to the minutes of March 13th, 2024? Go once, twice. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for March 13th.
Any-
Second.
Perfect. We have a motion to approve the minutes for March 13th, 2024. That's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion passes unanimous, 6-0. That takes us into agenda item 6A, a presentation from Framework. If one of you guys want to do a little bit of, oh, it looks like our screen's working. It's a little, okay. So if staff, as they kind of get things ready, if you wanted to just do a quick summary or introduce them again, I don't. Do a little dance.
We could do the announcement.
Huh?
We could mention
I think
All
we're,
right.
I think we're gonna have to put the lights down a little.
more.
It's
Yeah.
a little too light.
So while we wait for them to get going, we would like to share that Commissioner Elmstead has turned in her notice due to other obligations when it comes to family or business and
Remember
everything
where they put
else. She has stepped down from the Planning Commission, so we will have a position
This
open,
is a
start
PDF,
reaching out
yeah.
to the community, and
We
let's
will
get some good
post it
options.
Either tomorrow or Monday.
They've disabled, cool, okay.
The earth is tilted. We didn't know this
There we
building
go.
was lopsided.
That you may just have
Perfect,
to look.
great.
Like that we can deal with.
But it's my personality. Woo,
Just need a matchbook. Put it under there. There you are.
that's good. Nope.
All right.
Yep,
And do you want me to
you're
scooch
fine.
over?
You know, yeah.
I'm not a type A.
Yeah. I know, that's right. Okay.
Gotta keep that gavel handy, you never know.
Okay, can you hear me?
No,
No?
now I can.
Yes.
Now you can. Okay, great. Cool. So today we are coming back with just a check-in and also passing on the very beginning of the first two chapters. So land use and housing, as well as some of the background information that we're going to include in the beginning of the comprehensive plan. Just for your information, what we're planning on doing is, and what we're in the process of doing, is having two volumes. One is volume 1, which is just a very succinct volume that includes some background information on all of the plan elements, and then all of the goals and policies for each of the elements. So we're hoping to create a document that's really approachable and allows you all to use it as you're creating policy over the next 20 years. The second volume includes the existing conditions report that was completed last summer, including updates to that report that have happened subsequently due to new legislation that's passed. And so that will be in volume 2. Both volumes will have all of the elements in them. So just to go through quickly where we've been. So as you all know, this has been a very long process that we've undertaken, and so we're getting closer and closer to the end of 2024 and your final adoption of your comprehensive plan. But where we've been, we started off with community engagement, the creation of the community vision, which you've seen multiple times at this point, and that will be seen also in this in volume 1. And then we've been separately completing a policy review to ensure that the policies that we have in volume 1 reflect both your community vision as well as the requirements from the Growth Management Act, PSRC Vision 2050, and the Pierce and King County planning policies. So that's all been working together in order to create the policies that you will see in these first two elements. As part of that process, we did a lot of revision and cut down quite a number of, especially land use policies, because you had around 180 policies. And so we wanted to create a more succinct version. So as you're reviewing the housing and land use chapter, if you notice any particular gaps that you think are big omissions that we have removed from the previous version, please let us know. We think that we've covered everything. And then simultaneously, we've been working on the future land use refinement, which again has been a combination of trying to create the community vision in your land use, as well as, again, to fulfill state requirements as far as your growth targets. So all of that is coming together into volumes 1 and 2, and then we're on the path to adoption in 2024. Okay, yes.
Can I ask for I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the 2024 is for our adoption
Yes.
period, but it's really 2025 for the state and Pierce County. No, it is 20, because online it said it was 2025, and that's what's confusing me.
December 31st, and then the next day, it starts in 2025. Originally, they had a June deadline, which is typical,
Mhm.
they extended it 6 months because there were so many new requirements.
Okay. Okay.
At this point, end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. So going into the future land use map, you all have seen this many times. There have been 2 recent changes that Angela can talk about.
So I realized that I got ahead of it, but item B is sort of a recap of so we sent out notices to the different property owners. I only talked about 4 or 5 that called back. 2 of them had very strong opinions of not being changed. One is the embroidery. Even though I said the intent was to keep their use as a possibility, they just strongly were afraid that if it didn't have some sort of manufacturing in the overall title, that at some point would cause them to be forced to leave. And so my recommendation, I don't see a strong reason why we can't. I mean, some of that wouldn't make sense, but it would be fine. We would just need, when we get to the zoning, to make sure that we really look at what's allowed in that whatever light manufacturing zone we allow there, to make sure that we're only getting those things we want and not, we can make it a hybrid of maybe some commercial and light industrial uses that way. So the recommendation from staff is to go ahead and leave that at some sort of light manufacturing. The other is the properties on the north side of Milton Way across from the park, right at the corner of, 11th and Milton Way. She was very adamant that her mom was part of wanting to make that mixed use, that they still have a great desire. They have a vision to kind of have that like commercial with residential on top. That's what it's currently zoned. We had talked about kind of shrinking the part that was commercial and just focus in on the stuff right along Milton Way that is still along Milton Way. And then the rest of what is currently mixed use, just make it that slightly multifamily. So again, the second item kind of goes through all of that, but if the Planning Commission is comfortable of not changing those two, that would be staff's recommendation. And so I had passed that along a little bit ahead of time on Sarah, so. So we can talk about that under the item B if council really, or Planning Commission is comfortable with that and what those ramifications are, but if that makes sense.
So for the sake of the presentation, we're just assuming that's okay with
And if-
more
yeah.
information to come.
It'll match whatever
Okay.
Planning Commission's recommendation is, but
Okay,
I had passed those along as possibilities.
great.
So just as a recap, and also I think this might be the first time you're seeing this, but we have been working to create basically a growth capacity model to see, based on the changes that we're looking for in the future land use map, what sorts of housing can be accommodated. And so based on the changes that we've made prior to this most recent potential change, we have 153 potential uses or potential dwelling units at 30 dwelling units an acre in Uptown. And so that just barely gets us 13 over the dwelling units that are required by Pierce and King County collectively for the 0 to 50 AMI. And again, that's 0 to 50% area median income, so very low to low income housing that can really only be accommodated in apartment buildings according to Commerce guidance. So that's what we're planning. That's how we're planning to accommodate that housing within Milton, is in that Uptown area. For low density multifamily, which is 12 to 18 dwelling units per acre, that's the, if we go back here, that's this sort of mustard color. That we have 421 potential units as opposed to a 79 growth target for, again, both counties combined. And then for your single family, with the inclusion of the requirements from HB 1110, which again is the middle housing bill, 10 to 12 units per acre would get you at 833 potential additional units, which is well over the 60 that you are required. But it doesn't actually substantively change your zoning or what you have existing as your current land use. Okay. Any questions about that?
No, I'm blocking the light.
Okay. Good. Yeah, Jacqueline.
I just wanted to get a clarification. I thought we were going to just have a whole presentation and then have questions after, or are we changing?
Oh,
Could we
sorry,
get clarity
that's
on
fine.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let
yeah.
me, because we
the
hadn't, so if
Okay.
you want to have a few check-in points throughout the presentation, or if we start getting to a point where it's like, hey, I'm getting confused, or quick points of clarification are okay. But as far as roundtable discussion, we're trying to save it towards the end, just so that we don't detract from, so that we're
Perfect.
respectful of your time, and also so that all of the
we can
committee
be
or
efficient,
the
yeah.
planning commission is able to provide feedback.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
So moving ahead, sorry. Okay. We've spoken to both Anjali and Dustin about potential sub areas, which would be subsequent planning efforts after the plan is adopted in Uptown, Town Center, and along the Interstate 99 corridor. And that would allow us to really drill down into what those areas could look like. Oh my gosh. Can everyone see now? Okay, thank you so much, Anjali. So these are the proposed boundaries for each of those sub-areas. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. And then what you'll be reviewing in the next week or so. We have our introduction. So we've got, again, Volume 1, Volume 2. In Volume 1, we are passing on to you the introduction, community vision, land use element, housing element. And in Volume 2, the land use element, which again is a compilation of the existing conditions report. And then we will be rolling out the rest of the chapters over the next couple of months or really month and a half before your May 29th full draft hearing. Cool. So this slide is just kind of a reminder of what the comprehensive planning life cycle is. So we have our adoption here in 2024, but then this is a 20-year planning period. And throughout that period, we'll be implementing, we'll be monitoring, and we'll be refining, including another periodic update in 2034. So this is meant to be a living document that will be continued to be refined over that 20-year period. Great. So now I can either pause for questions or I can jump right into walking through the Convio with you all for getting your feedback.
Yeah, I think now would be a good time to pause for questions. So our style now is we will do a round robin. So I will start to the right of me, and then we'll just work a circle as far as asking any questions. And then once we get through the questions, we'll give you a chance to sift through what you heard and address any questions and answer them. So we will start with you, Vice Chair Oler.
I don't have anything right now.
Okay. My question, as far as just going back to the capacity slide, was that those were based off of if every available parcel was used to its max capacity. That is basically kind of where we would max out, correct? Is about 12 to 1,300?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's about right. So this includes a number of different deductions, including your critical areas deductions, infrastructure deductions,
Okay.
and it only includes parcels that are considered by the counties to be developable or vacant.
Okay. perfect.
So that's based on that, and depending on whether they're vacant or undeveloped, we apply different sort of assumptions. But yes, so the 10 to 12 is probably that's kind of like the maximum that would happen probably, and it's kind of contingent on we could use a more conservative market factor, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner Sweat, any questions?
I have nothing at this time.
All right. Commissioner Whalen?
Thank you. I have a few questions. One of them is the theme of the growth capacity model there. In prior presentations, there was a graphic that, and throughout the prior presentation, I'm even talking about Council's April 1st document, which was similar to ours. We saw density ranges number to number. But when we asked about it at last month's meeting with you, you mentioned that they were maximums.
Yeah.
And when you read it, it looks like 10 is for example, neighborhood residential. 10-12 looks like 10 is the minimum and 12 is the maximum. So I hope there'll be more clarity around that point of saying, and that it is net density, not gross.
Sure. Yeah.
So those kind of details, and again, it goes back to the buildable lands consistency review that the county did in 2008, where Milton was found to be inconsistent with what it had in its plan versus what was happening on the ground. And they acknowledged we don't have minimum, like if you start subdividing property, there aren't rules that say you have to do at least this amount,
Yeah.
and here's the most you can do. People were doing the least they could, which is 1 or 2 per acre. So I'm really concerned about the numbers and that we are really being careful about under-promising and over-delivering. In other words, not saying we're going to really reach this big goal when in fact we don't have that rigid a code, and I don't know that our community really wants that type of development pattern. So it's a theme, but I just wanted to be sure when I hear 10, 12, I go back to what are we talking about?
So for clarification, you're thinking that it would be more practical to put up to 12 dwelling units an acre versus saying 10 to 12, because 10 to 12 implies that you're looking for a minimum of 10 per acre if someone's trying to subdivide or something.
Right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Or saying that within this future land use designation, we anticipate 2 different subsets, as has been my understanding. There was neighborhood residential, and then there were 2 different categories under that. Is that still in play?
Well, part of the answer to your question is that the right side of the column there, that references HB 1110, that's a mandate from the state, but we haven't gone through the process of actually writing the zoning. And so we will be working with you on that. And as part of that process, there will be some policy decisions that we'll all need to work on together. You bring up a good point. When they do buildable lands, what they do is they go and look at the historic data. And they might say, okay, you can build a max of 10, but what we're finding is everyone's really building about 5 units an acre. So they'll use that 5 units an acre as their metric. A city could then go in and say, well, geez, we really want to see stuff built higher than that. So to your point, you could raise that up and then you could use that within your model. So that is to say, I expect once we get to that point, there will be a little bit of refinement that will have to happen. But one thing to point out is that our capacity there is 833 units. Our requirement to provide single-family housing capacity is probably in the 100-ish. I mean, our whole growth target is 300. So we're well in excess of that. And there will be a little bit of fine tuning to make sure that we get all the numbers right, but that's why there's a bit of ambiguity in there to give us some flexibility when we get to that discussion. And at that time, then we can decide, do we want minimum densities? Do we not want minimum densities? What are the types of housing we want to provide? Because even if you just apply the new accessory dwelling unit bill, which allows 2 per lot, you get typically, I just did this for a client today and they were shocked, but you quickly get well above 10 units an acre just doing the math on the very basic level of compliance. So great point. We will be coming back to have these discussions with you pretty soon in the next few months and work through those policy decisions, and then we can fine tune this to make sure we have everything buttoned up well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So the other thing that ties in with the accessory dwelling unit issue is that that's not counted in the density calculations, as I understand it. Please correct me, Manager Stolnicker, if I'm wrong about that.
It's a policy decision, and I think we're advising our clients to count them.
I agree.
Because
Should be.
otherwise it's just, like, even if you weren't counting them, you'd have to count them because they're being built. And so,
Under the current version,
yeah,
they're not. But that was prior to
yeah.
all the changes that are coming. So when we redo that section, yeah.
The other interesting thing is the ADU bill now, it doesn't just apply to single family. You have to allow ADUs for townhouses and other types of units. But I mean, one of the things that we've advised some of our clients is just, you can either do like a triplex, duplex, or some combination of small scale multiple unit development, or you can do an ADU scenario with a principal dwelling and smaller units. It's a bit of semantics at this point because the ADU provisions don't require a lot of the things that they used to, like the main house had to be owner occupied. You couldn't sell off the ADU. There were a lot of restrictions that have gone away. And so the difference between those is less than it used to be. So.
And just a second question on that same theme. Can you tell us, please, which House bill or Senate bill is driving these numbers? Because
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is there's been state legislation that says the
Yeah.
minimum density you can have is 10 dwelling units per acre.
It's not saying that, but when you do the math, that's essentially the result, depending on how big your lot is. So for the example I use with my client today, they have a minimum lot size of 7,200 square feet, right? Which is fairly large-ish for a single-family home. 7,200 square feet is 6 units an acre. You have to allow 2 accessory dwelling units for 3 units total. That's already 18 units an acre. And that's, you know what I mean? So the math accelerates pretty quickly. So the 10 to 12 is pretty modest. And, you know, we'll do some visualizations and some analysis so that you can see what those trade-offs are, right? I mean, bigger lots make it more expensive and potentially less affordable, but you get more space for open space and parking and trees and, you know, so those are the types of things that we will be exploring with you to find the right solution for Milton within the context of the law. So that's where those numbers come from. You asked another question about legislation. So the reason that we have to now divide the allocation up into different income levels, that comes from House Bill 1220. That actually modified the Growth Management Act to go from, I'm paraphrasing, supporting affordable housing to plan for and accommodate housing in all economic segments. So that's where those numbers come from. The ADU bill, I believe, is House Bill 1337. So check that one out. And then the last one, which is the middle housing bill, which is that last column, that is House Bill 1110.
So just finally on that issue of consistency, in 2008, we were meeting capacity and so forth, so that I'm just real sensitive to not
Yeah,
having to go
no,
through reasonable in a, you know, very confined time frame. So it was, what are you achieving versus what you say you're going to do?
Yeah.
And you know it, you're in the business, but so that's just a
Yeah,
concern.
well, it's a real issue, and so that's where we don't want to say, oh, we're going to expect this when we don't really expect it will happen, or we want to consider some prescriptive things that could make that a possibility. That would come into play more so when we have our 5-year monitoring report, and if we're saying, oh, we're going to get, you know, dense development at this intensity and these uses, and it doesn't happen, we would have to go through and kind of come up with reasonable measures, but I wouldn't think it would be to the level of like invalidating your plan or something like that because of a technical issue. And we did recently help, I guess it was a few years ago, the city of Sultan had the same thing. They had updated their plan and they hadn't accounted for some new numbers and their plan got invalidated. And so we had to go in and help them sort that out. So we're very sensitive to that issue. We've been meeting with PSRC for other clients, and I feel like we have a really strong sense of the modeling and requirements, and we'll just continue to work with you to make sure we put the city in the best position we can.
Thank you.
Great. All right, moving on, Commissioner Boyle, any questions?
I had no questions at this time.
Commissioner Johnson?
This is not a question on this, but it's about the Growth Management Act. When we look at how Washington State is versus other states.
Yep.
So it's not really the feds demanding we do this for across the country. It's a view of Washington State and how many others are as strident as Washington State
Yeah.
on changing the traditions of cities for growth.
Yeah, so I grew up in New England. I won't try not to make this too much of a tangent, but I grew up in Vermont, and I actually, for 6 years, got to be the planning director of my hometown. And in Vermont, there's no county government. There's no regional government. There is a regional planning organization that simply facilitates regional planning, but does not have any teeth. And so you quickly go from the 200 and whatever towns to the state. The state does not have a statewide planning program. Cities are not mandated to do a whole lot, although we recently got a project back in my hometown. They hired us, our firm, to come and do a project, which we're excited about. And they're just starting to roll out some of these things that we're doing here, which is targets for housing and whatnot, because they're having the same challenge. And I would say, from my perspective, working in both places, there's really trade-offs. I mean, it's nice to work in a city and have complete control, but the reality is it's pretty fragmented too. And there's a lot of competition amongst different cities for commercial development and tax revenue. There's aversion to housing growth to some degree, and they have a pretty bad housing and economic challenges from that. On the other hand, in Washington, sometimes it feels, pretty heavy-handed, and
No, it doesn't feel it, it is.
there's trade-offs. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but yes, I do have a perspective on that. And I would say the western states of like California, Oregon, and Washington are kind of all similar.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and then just to make sure, just one more round, and I'm just going to do kind of a eye contact, head nod. Any other questions?
Actually, I have something that came up that might be out of scope for this, but it's just a general question, and maybe Anjali knows. I'm thinking about when the higher density housing goes in, apartments or low density multifamily, is parking a part of that? Are they required to have like on-site parking plan?
So yeah, right now we have parking standards. That will be something that when we get to that second half, we may choose to not change that at all. We may choose to look and see if it should go up, should it go down, should it depend on how close it is to transit. But so yes, right now, if someone was putting in, we have a section that talks about how much parking spaces. And even if it's not part of this, that is a section at some point we probably should revise.
Agree with that.
And I will say the trend is to lower parking standards to some extent and let market be a part of that, especially if it's near transit. But I don't see a city like us ever we don't have the transit to go to nothing. We will assume people have cars here.
Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt. I do a lot of parking work and have done it across the country because it's always the most important issue that people want to talk about. And I would just say, primarily you just want to make sure you're not requiring too much parking for environmental reasons, cost reasons, whatnot. We find that the market-based approach typically results in a similar amount of parking because it's baked into financing and other mechanisms like that. If you're interested in the topic of parking, I was involved in a project called Right Size Parking for King County years ago. It was a huge research project that became a model kind of around the country. But it basically looked at actual parking demand versus what was built or what was required. And what we found at that time in Seattle area, and we had done data collection at like 200 and something facilities, and then this firm did this statistical model to predict it all across the county on this map. And we found that on average, each building had 0.4 parking stalls per unit more than they needed. But in some cases, if you're talking hundreds of units, that could be 100 parking stalls at $70,000 a piece if they're underground parking. And so that was used to help cities kind of right-size their parking requirements, some of which we worked with. So it is a really important issue on multiple fronts and something we'll take a look at and see what the best solution is.
Great. And then continuing down the list, just one last, anyone have any further questions or comments before they move over? Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
Yes, Sarah, in your presentation, I think it was after this page, you talked about Volume 1, Volume 2, and that there was a lot of pruning, so to speak, of our policies as they're currently stated. Could you please talk more about the reasoning, what seems so superfluous about it? I think we were looking at it from a perspective of we really want to have those policies in place to defend the decisions that we need to do. So to hear less, I'm just curious to learn about.
Yeah, no,
that work.
I think that's a relevant question. From doing the policy review, we found that there were a number of policies that were showing up in multiple places. And so one of the things that we were doing is trying to remove some of the redundancy. So we're looking at the land use element as really this place where we're determining how Milton is set up, and then also as a vehicle for coordinating the other elements. So say if it has to do with housing and also economic development, those policies are going to end up in the land use element. The other thing that we really needed to do is, because there's been so much state legislation, we needed to make sure that we were checking off all of those boxes and making sure that language was in there, as well as the language that had come from all of you. And so in the interest of doing that, we kind of had to create, or we created more of a hybrid for some of them. But I think we were looking at keywords. We were trying to be very intentional about ensuring that the things that were important to you were continuing to be conveyed. And of course, we want your feedback to make sure that we did a good job on that.
And I'll just add, our team has a very rigorous process that they've developed to go through this because there are so many requirements. And just to your point, we feel confident that we're not putting the city at any risk and that we're setting you up for success with the depth of the policy, the usability of it, and, you know, some renewed focus as well. So, good question.
Yes.
Another one, thank you so much. Could you please talk a little bit more about the future land use map designations versus the zoning districts? And the adjoining question is, are we going to be talking about the subsets of those future land use designations in the comp plan, or is that something you don't put in a comp plan anymore?
Well, you could put the general categories in there. You wouldn't put the actual zoning map in there, but you might show the connection between the different future land use categories and your zoning categories. It doesn't have to be in there, but it could. And I think, again, because like the middle housing bill in particular is putting things out of whack, like things that were called, like in one of our communities, they had something called urban residential, and people, you know, we have that here too, but people think, oh, it's like very intense. But those standards are now becoming the standards of the middle housing zoning. So there's some work to figure out, okay, well then what does urban residential mean? Do we change it to this new category, or do we make it something else? And that's kind of like one of our very next steps. We're gonna come back to you with a outline and a framework for how the code will be updated. And as part of that, we'll have those discussions. And then we can decide if we want to put them in the plan or not. I think we have some good information in there that describes the intensity and shows examples of development that's consistent with the future land use map category. So I feel like we kind of have that covered. But we'll see where things shake out in a month or two when we start that exercise with you, and then figure out how to plug it in or not.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, that kind of triggered my brain of something that Sarah had said earlier in the presentation is, this is the bulk of the comp plan update is this year. It doesn't mean, I mean, every year you can amend it. So if there are certain things we realize that, you know, we don't want to do a major update after this year, but there are things that can be adjusted as the city adjusts or as we understand things better. So, you know, it's if there's things that we realize in November, December that we're like, oh, maybe we should, you know, maybe we would like at the, you know, it's too late to list which zoning is under each, but that doesn't mean we couldn't next year add those as part of our one-time update. And I do think historically it feels like we've sort of, this was adopted like 10 or 8 years ago, and then not a lot has been done to it.
Yeah.
I would perceive now it might be, again, not a lot, but little adjustments may happen as you want to keep it updated and relevant, especially when you come to things like, you know, capital facilities or, you know, different things, so.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of my favorite part about this diagram is like this little line. That's how long we get to do the plan, right? So the plan lasts 20 years. That line is our year, 2 years we're getting to spend on it, right? And so when you start to think of it in that context, it's like, oh, actually all the work is kind of here. It should be, right? Because you want to implement it and see things happen. You want to understand how you're doing. You want to refine it. So it's really, in a way, the plan sets the foundation, but the rest of it is really the programmatic element of it to implement it.
Just going down the row. Any further questions or comments before they move into Conveo? Yes, Commissioner Johnson?
Just to say too, it's we're really having to do a major cleanup because of all the new regulations
Yeah.
that have come out that are so heavy and that so much has changed. And in 8 years, 8 years now is a blink in the eye, and we've moved so fast. So I think that's why what your work you're doing, I really appreciate because of your experience. And it's been time, and we can't fight the state, And name changes, we change a marriage, right?
What's that?
We change in a marriage, we're married to the state.
All right. So with that, we've had 2 rounds of discussion. So unless anyone's got anything really pressing, we'll go ahead and allow you guys to continue.
Okay, we'll go through the comment.
All right.
So you are all experts at Convio now, but if at any point you would like a refresher or to talk to me on the phone to walk through how it works, please, by all means, reach out. And I think Angeli has passed on my information. So this Convio is just a way for us to get feedback from you in one place so that we can implement it efficiently. At the top here, we've just got the presentation that I just gave you, that we just gave you. And then below that is a reference map. So this is really designed for you to be able to go in and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page about land use, et cetera. So in the bottom left, you'll find a list of different layers. So if you need place references, those are in there so you can find them. We've got boundaries, existing land use designations, the National Wetland Inventory. One that I would highlight is buildable parcels. So those are all the parcels that both King and Pierce County have indicated are buildable. So those are the ones that are contributing again to the numbers that you saw for the different area median income brackets. And then down here is the most recent draft future land use map. So you can turn on and off layers and compare things to make sure that all of those things are clear. Okay. And then below is we have 2 volumes. So volume 1 and volume 2. Again, in the first volume, we have an introduction, a planning framework, the community vision, and the first 2 elements, so land use and housing. And you can go through there. And again, if you see this plus sign, you can add comments to things as you note them. There's a guided tour here at the bottom so that you can click through and see some of the more salient parts. Of course, Convio is now telling me that. Okay, so you can click through, again, make comments. If there are these little icons on the side, you can click on them and make a specific comment. So for instance, we were starting to have a discussion about perhaps, sort of to Jeff's point, maybe coming up with a different name for urban residential that's more in line potentially with the community vision. And respecting sort of the small town feel that you all, that's very important to the city of Milton. So there's some question about should we change names or any other things that you want to add to our future land use map. Okay. Thank you, Convio. Okay. And then the second one, if you go between the 2, there's this volume 2, which is our second volume. And again, that has, and you may have to adjust the size a little bit, but can just go through. So yes, I think that's a pretty quick tour. If anyone has any questions about the functionality of Convio or how to access it, I can answer that too.
So you'll send out a link on that?
I'll send out a
again?
link,
Okay.
and I'll you can email me back directly from there to make sure that, yeah, that you have the support that you need to fill it out.
And then
Frame.
Oh, yeah, and then, this is a great point. Jeff is pointing out, this button is awesome. It's a full screen, so that'll help you in being able to view everything. Yes.
All right, and then when would you like comments back on this, or will you include that in your email? For
Yeah,
the link?
I can include
Okay.
that in my email. Yeah, I think prior to your next meeting would be good because we're going to be, again, rolling out more elements
Okay.
subsequently.
So I request, sorry that I'm kind of going ballparking here. I would request that we try to do that, and then when we get the packet, the agenda packet, that we just get one last reminder to get those comments in probably the Friday prior to, or the
Yep.
Monday prior to our next meeting, so that people have over the weekend
Yep.
after that reminder comes in. Okay.
And then if anyone needs, I know we have various levels of computers. The city can always provide us a workstation or something if you would prefer to do it here. We can also print out hard copies. It's designed for 11 by 17 because you're folding it in half for a booklet. So if you also would like a paper copy to go along with what's here, we can do that as well.
That might help as well. Okay.
Yep.
So many options.
Like point of information, like point of information. Um, So you're only looking for feedback on this map, on changes, edits? Is there also another acceptable way to provide feedback, like an email, like, hey, I think this, or that's good as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, we're looking for feedback on the entire draft, so not necessarily just about the map, the future land use map, if there are changes that you want to make. Mostly the map that I've included in there is just as a reference, so you know these are the reasons why we're making the decisions that we're making. But yeah, you can leave comments throughout the draft, and that is very appreciated, and with a special attention to the ones that are pinned on the side, which are those little icons that are on the side, which are sort of prompting you to contribute to discussions. And really the reason for that is that it's just more efficient for us to go through and be able to kind of aggregate all of your comments really quickly so that we can evaluate and kind of incorporate them efficiently.
Okay. Perfect. So we'll look forward to an email with a PDF, a link to the Conveo, a due date, and instructions. If anyone has any questions or comments, let's route them through staff so that we're respectful of the city's budget. If she can address it in-house, we'll do it that way. If we need to
Sounds great.
escalate it up. Does that sound like a good plan to everybody? Yes, Commissioner
Quick,
Whalen.
thank you for outlining the hopeful outcomes. When can we look forward to getting this email and link from you to start working on it?
I'll try to get it out to you tomorrow.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other?
I want your feedback as soon, ASAP is great. As soon as you start leaving comments, I can start adding them into the report.
All right, great. And then if anyone needs any IT support, meetings on how to go through it, start with staff. I'm also happy to take calls and do things, but we'll work with you first. All right, great. Well, I think just one last round of questions, thank yous, comments, anything for our presenters here. I'll start with Vice Chair Oler.
I don't have anything more. Thank you.
All right. Just want to say thank you again for your time. Thank you for continuing to take our feedback and our comments and incorporate them into the next presentation. And I look forward to seeing these next rounds.
I've got nothing at this time.
Thank you for your work and synthesizing so many divergent opinions. I do have a comment and something to offer you. You may already have access, I'm sure you do, Pierce County Buildable Lands Report. It shows a different urban growth boundary in the southwest corner than what has been shown. And I do have a printout here if that's useful to you. So if,
Yeah, we've been working with Pierce County and Fife And there's, yeah, to make sure that whatever's the new one is what we've all agreed to. And there will still be an overlap area with Fife that will have to be resolved later.
A boxing match later.
I have to refresh my brain about this, but I think part of it is there's a shared UGA and the tracking of who's annexed what has not been recorded, I think, and communicated as best it could. So we can take another look at it and come back with that issue. But we essentially met with them a while back, and they didn't really have the capacity to kind of take on the issue with the shared UGA at this time. So that was a limiting factor to our collaboration.
Well, if
So we'll
I
come
could
back on that.
Add on, so it's here for you in print to show you Fife's annexation history. And in 2004, they annexed, it's number 25 on this annexation history, but they took a chunk south of the Interurban Trail. And so, just, you know, I'm a detail person, sorry.
Thanks. We'll take a look again.
All right, and then running down the row, Commissioner Boyle.
Good. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate your time.
Commissioner Johnson.
Ditto
Smith?
on it all.
All right, great. Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you guys,
much. Take care.
appreciate it.
Thanks. Drive careful up north. There were a lot of accidents on the road today.
Yeah.
All right.
Gets us that.
Look at a loud humming of the engine there. Okay, so with that, we'll take that to agenda item 6B, which is an update about the public reach. A little bit of that was alluded to with our map that was shown earlier, and that is in our packets,
Page 7.
page 7.
So yeah, little cart before the horse. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to bring back an update. We sent out 57 personalized letters to the various properties that have been proposed to change from one type to another. We heard back from 5 of the owners. And so I just did a quick synopsis of each. 1, 2, 3, yeah. So the first, there was 2 properties along 70th, they are between 70th and 99. They're currently zoned and designated business. We have proposed to make them neighborhood commercial or neighborhood residential, which would be our lowest density residential. Part of that was based on the fact that they really don't have, most of them don't have access on 99 because of a hillside. They are all built out as houses for the most part. I don't think, there's definitely no active main commercial buildings. There's a few home occupations and such. So I had 2 property owners call. The first was kind of concerned with what did neighborhood residential mean. They didn't want higher density residential. They were afraid of like a huge subdivision. They also had heard from a neighbor that the city was looking to take over their properties in eminent domain. So we went through all of that, and I explained that it actually was the lowest density residential we have. And looking at the existing property layouts, you know, there could be a short plat here or there, but it's not going to be a massive amount of residential properties. And they seemed very happy with that, and they want it to be, I mean, they are residential and they want it to keep residential. The second property owner does have sort of a home occupation. So they had purchased it thinking because it was commercial, but their intent is to continue to live in that. They didn't have any active plans to tear it down and make it commercial. And then again, I think this is where property 1 had heard, they were under the understanding that Sound Transit was going to be coming through and purchasing their properties. And so I didn't put it in here, but they were afraid it was that we were intentionally lowering their property values so that Sound Transit could come through and not have to pay them as much. So I said that was not our intent at all. We were just simply looking at what was there, and it seemed like it made sense to just keep what was there. I have since confirmed with Sound Transit that none of their And I mean, none of the ones that I had seen go anywhere near this property. And so I did come back and confirm, said, did you have any other plans? And they don't have anything that would be on the west side of 99 going through there. So I think with both of them, they were both satisfied with those answers with why we were changing it. And I don't think that either one objects to that after they had their questions answered. So then the next is what I kind of mentioned. So Gina Bertolina, they own the property that's on the north side. It's outlined in blue on that little picture, or at least it's the part that's on 11th and Milton Way. So she really would like it to stay with whatever mixed use we come up with. She said her mother, who was the previous owner, was very instrumental. They have a very passion of helping create that kind of local area where hopefully there could be some, you know, maybe a daycare and a little coffee shop where people live. And she talked a lot about the European model, the British model of kind of having that. So she really wanted that property to stay with that mixed use. As staff, we don't have any objection to that. If the planning commission's comfortable, we will return it back to, and there's a little piece of their property that for some reason was zoned separately. So it seems like it should all be consistent. So if planning commission doesn't have any objections or has whatever, we could put it all back. We could leave it under the mixed use for that area. And then the next one is what I talked about. It's on Yuma, Milton Way, 20th, and what is that, Freeman. It's the embroidery shop. He was very frustrated that we would change his designation. And so we talked for quite a while. I tried to explain what we were thinking and that we definitely valued his business and that there was never any intent to not allow his business. We just didn't want other things that could be industrial that wouldn't fit in that area. But his feeling was then we should address those uses and leave him alone. So if we're comfortable, again, we're going to go through part of what we need to go through with all of the zones is the use table. So we could, if the planning commission again is okay with it, we could leave his designation. I will say across the street, across Freeman in Milton Way, in Fife, it is sort of it's definitely not going to be like retail commercial. They've got a business coming in that's more warehousey. So it's not out of place if we leave that area light manufacturing and then come through and make sure that whatever subzoning that we settle on really kind of limits. Because for us, I don't think we don't want semi-truck parking there. I'm not sure that we would want and again, I don't see that business going anywhere anytime soon, but on the long term, 20, 30, 40 year perspective. So again, that's one, if the planning commission is comfortable to just leave it as M1 light, I think it will become, it won't be M1, it'll be light industrial, I think is the name that they've proposed. And then the final one is simply the 800 Fife Avenue, which we had already had, the planning commission had already had correspondence from Mr. Henton. It's the one that on 800 Fife, it's currently designated residential. They've got a kind of a manufacturing, but it's a very low impact. I did notify the neighbors around that property as well, the residential ones, because that's the one would be sort of be going the opposite. I did not hear from any of the neighbors. Again, I think there's a substantial enough hill and vegetation, and it's been there that, again, I think what we have proposed for them is what we're calling neighborhood center. So it would be more commercial in nature with the intent would be, and that was his thing, as long as it's somehow we're putting in some low impact industrial options that would allow him to continue what they're doing, then he's in favor of the change. Obviously, residential doesn't work for him at all. So, and there is a way that we could, and there's a lot more now that could fall under that category that doesn't, again, we could make it so that whatever it is, doesn't have the negative impacts on anyone else. And so, like I said, as long as that's the direction we're going, which is what I believe we are, he had no objections.
I have a point of information. How is neighborhood center different from mixed use?
So, the focus will be more on, I think, a commercial. I mean, it has the option of a residential up above, but I think what we're picturing there would be a much more commercial in nature, that you would have more of, in most cases, probably something that's a little more retail-y or service-oriented or something. The idea is to create those little pockets.
So
The
bottom
mixed
floor
use could be
retail,
more
restaurants, top floor residential.
like one layer, like you could have just above. I think the mixed use could have a couple layers. It's a little
Okay.
more.
Okay.
So that's the extent of my thing. And then I don't know, like I said, I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up for discussion. This time I will switch it up and I'll start with you, Commissioner Johnson.
When we were looking at the neighborhood centers, I thought we were looking at different spots where we could put the businesses below and apartments above, units, a little couple units above. So you had walkability and stuff like that. And part of it, I thought, was to protect that area from becoming like Fife in the Valley with all the warehouses. So if we were to let on Freeman Road stay M1, a criteria that there had to be a further criteria so we didn't get warehouses, that we actually had businesses, because the warehouses give us no income. If they're just holding stuff, it goes to wherever the places is sold. So the goal is to provide income and places for people to go buy rather than housing stuff. And so the question is, does, excuse me, I'm sorry, M1 is manufacturing light. And as long as it's that and there's no storage, that actually, I'm not opposed.
And I think that's, yes, it would be a priority, and it would be, I guess, imperative that when we get to that second phase, that we identify what we mean.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it could be under the light industrial, you could have a hybrid, maybe not the apartments, but you could have a hybrid that allows, like here, he's an embroidery, but he's also, I mean, he's selling them too. There's a retail element to
right.
his. And so, yes, and then we could allow a few commercially type things, and specifically, say that it does not allow warehouses. It does not allow
Right.
cement factories. It does
Right.
not allow
Right.
things. So, yeah, we could definitely make whatever is zoned there fit what we're comfortable with and what we think that area could handle. Because, yeah, you don't want trucks going on those roads. I don't see that being a good thing.
Well, can I continue?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
When we look at Mr. Hinton's on Fife Avenue, fabrication, I didn't know we allowed that in residential areas. Is it-
It's grandfathered in.
Okay.
So that's the challenge there, is his business has been there it's been there for like 40 some years, but at the last comp plan, it was zoned residential. So this was sort of maybe the compromise.
But is there a way that we could categorize it so he can stay there? I mean, again, we were looking at places to help with housing also. The neighborhood center, the urban residential, part of it was businesses and housing. Is how can we, at least my assumption, I could be wrong, is that we were trying to keep what we can't say anymore, single family areas, and try to find other places that we could put multiple housing units in, along with businesses. So instead of that being residential, could it be M1? If we're not going to keep it, because if he sells at some point, well, maybe down the future.
So you're talking about the 800 Fife
Yeah,
Avenue?
Uh-huh.
I think the feeling was we didn't want M1 there because it's next to residential. So if we made it a neighborhood center, which has a more commercial orientation, that would, it could possibly be redeveloped or things added that would be good for the neighborhood, but it would also allow him to have something that's not impactful.
And so because he's grandfathered in, even if we change the name, he'd still be allowed to do the fabrication.
He's allowed to continue to do what he's doing.
Okay,
So
Sell to someone to,
he can, as long as it's the same business
oh, okay.
type and the same type of use, he can continue the way our code is written.
Okay.
So it can go from one light manufacturer or whatever he calls himself
right.
to another.
But the possibility is if he sold it and people knew it was a neighbor down the road, I don't know how old the man is or if family's involved, but just say 10 years down the road, it's sold. And it doesn't mean that somebody may buy and said, I like the neighborhood center. So I feel keeping the neighborhood center on that one would be advantageous as long as he's protected while he's there.
Mhm. And I think my feeling is, knowing a little bit about that business, or at least the structure that's there, it probably has a higher likelihood of redeveloping to something that was commercial than to residential, because residential, you're having to basically tear down and start over. Where if whatever's there decides to go away, the fact that they have some commercial options, I think it is more likely that something like that would go in, which again would be more at, lower impact and may go away from just the manufacturing. It could go to something that's less. So that was the thinking behind that.
Any other questions?
No, I like the neighborhood center because I think also it's right next to the power plant too, so.
All right, continue down the row. Commissioner Boyle, any comments or questions on?
Yeah, I look at the zoning map and at some point, I call it lower Milton. No offense for those on the commission that live in lower Milton. It's always been confusing to me because it goes from like moderate, it goes from M1 to moderate to the super site to residential to M1 back to residential and then to the M1 again, or manufacturing, whatever the bridge warehouse. So whatever we're calling that now. And so at some point we're going to have to make a decision here. Are we going to hem-haw around about individual lots and this, that, and the other? Or are we just going to slam in M1 through the whole thing, give these people that are going to have all these trucks pounding on Fifth Avenue the option to sell to a developer to make more commercial buildings along Fifth Avenue? And fill these gaps? Or we can go through each individual property owner here. This guy wants this and this guy don't want that. I mean, is this a decision that we should be making to turn Fifth Avenue into Freeman Road, which I predicted 10 years ago was going to happen anyways? But is streamlining going to be easier and more, and how do I say this? Is it going to be, I don't want to say,
Less cruel to rip off the Band-Aid or?
I don't want to say
yeah,
profitable for the existing homeowners,
yeah.
but is it going to give them more options in the future to change the zoning throughout Fifth Avenue and all the way down Porter Way and all the way down Fifth Avenue, or Fife Way. It's just an option. I'm just wondering if streamlining is going to be easier in the long run. As far as the Bertolina property, they've owned it forever. I'd love to give them the option of of doing the mixed use like they want to do. I think that's fair. I think it fits the neighborhood. With the Sternberg's property across the street, I think it kind of fits. As far as Mr. Mickelson, a pillar of the community, he's been here forever, and I would like to work with him with what he has, his vision for his property is to remain there and to continue. I know he's a multi-generational owner, and or you know, his kids are involved, and so that place isn't going anywhere, and I'd like to work with him whatever we can. And the same with Mr. Hinton. He's grandfathered in. I mean, I don't know if it's like you've got a manufacturing business. Is it going to be residential, which it's not? Kind of, it is. Or is it going to be neighborhood center, which it's not? So I think we just leave that one alone for now. I mean, obviously he's not happy about it, the neighborhood center. So anyways, to wrap it up is, are we going to make a decision to just turn this all M1 all the way through and just make a Freeman Road out of it? And then, you know, we've got these are really kind of in the outskirts of it. One's at one end, one's kind of in the middle. But the Hinton property fits the M1.
The only thing I would say is, I feel like it may be too late in this process to change Fifth Ave, but it definitely could be identified as an area that we need to study further. Because I feel like if then we would need to notify all those property owners, and my guess is you're going to get a real mix of who's in favor and who's not in favor.
Too fresh.
Yeah, and they're still reeling from having to have sidewalks put in. So, but it definitely could be. I don't disagree with what you're thinking, and so it might be worth putting on that that's an area we want to study further. Now, maybe with, you know, sidewalks and street trees and stuff, some of those houses may improve. I don't know. But I feel like at this point, considering we have to make a recommendation and we have to have an adoption by the end of the year, you're probably, something of that magnitude might be too much. So that's my 2 cents, but I'm done now.
Can I get a rebuttal? Not a rebuttal. Not a rebuttal. No, I appreciate that. But I just have a feeling that, you know, I don't know that these residents realize how impacted they're going to be when traffic opens back up on that road and they're trying to pull out of their driveways. You see some of those driveways, somebody built an 8-foot wall 4 feet from the curb. So you're having to nose out where every other zoning around here is a 20-foot. Didn't we do our triangle? Or we did a triangle.
20 feet on a corner.
What happened to their triangle?
I'm on the
You know,
circle.
I mean, and it's the same thing pulling out of Surprise Lake Middle School on that upper driveway. There's a giant wall right there. And so I think once things start happening on this road, you're right. Let's wait another year, 2 years. Like the guy said, you can change things as, you know, after the comp plan thing. But it's something we really should consider because I didn't want it to happen. I wanted to protect the rights of the property owners on Fifth Avenue. I spoke, I fought, I complained. I'm pretty good at complaining. My point was ignored and not even considered. it's done. There's a giant warehouse going in at one end and then M1 by Fifth Avenue. So anyways, I'll let it go, but something we should consider. I mean, I think. Elephant in the room? No.
All right.
All right, thank you for your time.
Point
Thank you.
heard. All right, moving to Commissioner Whalen.
Okay, I'll start with the easy one first, or easier. On page 8, the Bertolino property. I think keeping it mixed use would be fine. I do need clarification on what that blue outline means, because I'm not sure how to interpret that. Is it going to be expanded north because they own it, but that property is developed, I thought, with duplexes sort of terraced into the hill, but I might be wrong with my
Yeah, so
geography.
this was the maps that I sent them, which is what it currently is. So anything that is currently outlined in blue is currently identified as mixed use, but the Planning Commission's current proposal would make it that, I think it's the low density. It would end up being kind of like or I think it would kind of be our middle, what do we call it? Medium density residential kind of stuff. So it would allow much more, it would allow the housing, the higher density housing, but it would sort of remove the commercial part, was the thinking. The idea being then, because the feeling was it's probably not all going to be that way. And maybe we just make that center and we just add the housing around it. So it would be keeping the level of housing a little bit higher that you get with the mixed use, but it would take out the commercial component. That was the thinking. And so anything that's in blue was going to go just of that mixed, that urban residential, which is, again, we may come up with a different name. One of the things I saw was like low-rise mixed use, so that, it's not the tall, but it's mixed use. So anyway, basically the idea is that those would become mixed use, not the commercial combined.
Point of information, urban residential is how dense?
I think it's the 20 to 30 max. So it's right now what we have that, and it's like the townhouses. It's probably 3-story apartments at the most. That's still pretty low nowadays on the,
Yeah, I want to say, wasn't the urban residential like 15 to 18?
maybe it was 15 to 18.
And then there was the
Yeah, you're
higher
right.
density was up to
Yes,
30. And that was
Uptown,
only on
Uptown
Meridian.
is the 30.
Okay.
The middle is the 15 to 18. You're correct. Thank you. So it's not even as high as I was thinking.
Okay, so I'm okay with that, the Bertolino property staying, whatever is mixed use now could stay as mixed use, because the blue line that incorporates the orange to the north of the Bertolino property is throwing me off. That will not become mixed use, correct?
So the idea is that it would become, it's all one parcel and it's vacant property right now. So the idea was that we would make it all the same.
So it's going to be notched like that. So currently mixed use goes
Yep.
straight across, and you're saying that the request is to change what is currently residential moderate density into mixed use.
Yes, just because it would make, it would make the parcel all consistent. Because right now, that's all one parcel. It's split between mixed use and the residential. And so it would just make the parcel all the same, which would make it easier when they do decide to develop.
But now we're extending the impact of mixed use to those adjoining properties. So my opinion is what's currently mixed use, leave it mixed use. And what's currently residential moderate density, that orange color, that would be turned to the new urban or town center or whatever.
But then she'd have to subdivide her property to
Well,
build
there's-
on it because that's one parcel.
Right, but, and I mean, that's
Yeah.
just my 1 out of 7 or 6 opinion on it.
Yeah.
So the Bertolino. The Mickelson, I'm okay with, I'm really not okay with the light industrial name. I'd really like to have that toned down quite a bit. What that business is currently doing is not particularly impactful. It really, I mean, you drive by and it's quiet, there aren't fumes, there aren't, so it's like, that's not bad. And yeah, that fits into the M1, as we currently call it, category, but it's what the use is, it's that table of uses that matter, not the name in my book. And so if we had, I know some people may not be able to be persuaded to that perspective because of their history, and I've encountered some of that, but I would encourage, if whatever way we go with this, that the type of industrial activity going on there, that's the most intense, the most noisy, the most impactful. Like and that rules out a lot of objectionable stuff. And it may mean that in future revisions, it gets a new name. So I don't know whether we can address the issue by creating a different designation for this type of super light industry or cottage industry, or I don't know. But I don't see that a name change would, particularly when we hear in the meeting, well, so-and-so's been doing that for 40 years, they're grandfathered in. Well, they were non-conforming. They're legal non-conforming. They can't expand it, et cetera. I don't know if that's too garbled a message for you there.
No,
but
and I completely agree with you. And I spent a half an hour on the phone trying to explain to him, but he literally, he's strongly opposed to a name change that doesn't make him fall under that kind of manufacturing thing.
well,
Right.
maybe we could come up with super light manufacturing or something that the manufacturing's in there, but.
And I was thinking of, like I said, if nothing else, at the zoning level, some sort of, and maybe we do it for the designation. I'm just getting nervous because we're running,
Right.
but we could definitely at the zoning level, if not here, come up with some sort of hybrid, like you said, super light assembly. Because really that's what he's so.
Low smog manufacturing. or
And
something.
commercial, kind of like, it's this sort of little pocket thing. And we come up with a name that doesn't say commercial, but doesn't necessarily say industrial, and we go on with life. But yes.
Well, can there, I'm sorry.
We're going to continue down the row, if that's cool. Okay. Any,
So the Henton property, I need a better, I don't think residential is really going to work there unless it was a more high density kind of a very compact type of development. Neighborhood center, I'm flipping through this page to see what it is. Ground floor, commercial uses, some second story residential. I don't know what he's doing there now, but the designation, I think, should move to a little more like a neighborhood center kind of a concept. Live where you work kind of thing. I could see that redeveloping into an amazing community artist studio, or, there's so many possibilities where you'd have the square footage, easy access, and yeah, you're next to the substation. It's not so pretty, but, it's,
And if I talk too much, cut me off,
will do.
because I have a tendency. No, and I guess that's where I think this is our best bet,
okay.
is if the uses that property are allowed to, because right now they are stuck on either tearing it down and building houses or keeping within this line of fabrication.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. Where if we gave them options that are more where we would like them to be, that under this neighborhood center, yes, somebody could rent that space and turn it into something else that's more commercially, neighborhoody centered. I think that has a possibility of happening, transitioning to something more. Because right now he's limited to this or tearing it down. And so you're just going to get this.
Right.
So I will be
Okay.
done.
So that was page 8, on page 7, the 70th Avenue East discussion for 2 different property owners, I've often looked at that and thought, why wouldn't that be zoned to a higher residential density, given that it's right along Highway 99, transit corridors, and the like? That business access is kind of tricky because it's such an awkward access area. So going away from business, I guess it goes to a bigger question when we put these ideas out there. When is it going to make the change? You know, what drives the change if we're going to be so, what's the word, amenable to, yeah, we know you've been doing such and such there, you can keep on, and when the property sells, I know Milton doesn't like to be particularly heavy-handed, but at any rate, it seems to me neighborhood residential, that would be where the high-density type of neighborhood resident, because that, if I understood that future land use map designation, there were several different types of housing, and that it was sort of doing away with the moderate density where it was and sprinkling it around the city. Maybe I misunderstood, but we can always go back and change it, but I look at that and say that could be high residential or high density. So, and the other thing that would be helpful is if we could get some sort of a printout to help us understand what the concepts are for these various land use designations. Because, thank you, I'm kind of floundering with that and trying to understand, when did we see that? Was it a year ago? And what it's evolved into now. So, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Seth?
Okay. 70th Avenue East, I'm not 100% sure where this particular property area is.
It's over here.
So,
95, 99, it's this,
oh, it's that?
it's 70th Avenue.
It's on the other side of
the-
I-5?
Yes, on the other side of Porter. You take Porter, you hit 99, and then you go up the hill, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is 99?
And it's on the west side of that Plan Chicken Road?
Yeah, it's on the west side, and
Okay.
it's all the houses that are kind of
Toe
up
of the
high.
hill.
Gotcha.
That lead up to Five Heights?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be pretty, it's going to be kind of tough putting residential. Is there a lot of homes in there right now? There is?
The idea was, it's currently designated to become businesses, and nothing has happened there. It's homes, and as far as I can tell, people are happy with, it's also not a great road, so I just don't, I think people were thinking, oh, it's got access from 99, but I don't see it being developed for businesses. People are going to do stuff that has access off of 99. So the thinking was, let's just make it residential because that's what's there, and I think that's what's going to stay there.
I agree. Neighborhood residential. Moving on. The 11th Avenue properties, I think I agree with everybody else. Keep it mixed use. Mickelson's issues, what is it designated now as, M1?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there anything in that, what does M1 actually stand for?
So M1 is light manufacturing,
Okay,
but which means right now you could have warehouses, you could have a cement. There's something about cement. There's some
Yep.
stuff like that.
so I think it should probably stay M1. And yeah, Mickelson's done a lot for this community in the city. And I'd like to do whatever we can to keep him happy. But with stipulations in the definitions of M1, we want to eliminate having the warehouses, storage units and stuff like that. Does that make sense? Okay. I'll leave it at that. And this last one, I like the idea of neighborhood center. I mean, that's a interesting concept, having where you could do something commercial on the lower end and then, you know, residential above it. I think that would be good. And it's not going to affect the guy that's there with a business now. What kind of business is it?
Can't remember what the latest was. I don't know if I should put on the record either. I think it was, I know the one I was looking at, because they were looking at transitioning from, and we were looking at how they could do, what the fabrication covered. It had something to do with diamonds or something, like they were manufacturing or cutting, which I say that very carefully. But previously to that, they were doing some other fabrication. So like I said, that's why I think if you keep it where he could transition to something commercially, I think there's a better chance it would evolve to something more acceptable.
And he could still do that under the neighborhood center designation. And I like that idea. I like the neighborhood center. And that's really pretty much all I have.
All right, perfect. And then Vice Chair Oler, any comments?
Oh, you're not gonna, okay, you'll go last.
I go last.
You go last, yeah. Highway 70th, I was unaware that was even part of Milton. I thought that was Five Heights on that side of the road. It's definitely all houses now. That road is terrible. I mean, I don't have any objections. There's no real, it's not really fronted on 99. It's not really in a great place. So that should be residential, I agree. For the Berlina property, mixed use seems appropriate. I still am kind of struggling to understand the difference between mixed use and neighborhood center. I keep thinking of 5/1s. That's mixed use, but is that also neighborhood center? 1/1. I mean, could you have a 5/1 in the neighborhood center and that would be okay? You know what I mean by 5/1, right? That's where you have the retail and the restaurants and the coffee shops, little fun, yeah, little gathering places, and then you have 5 floors of condos or apartments above. And people hate them because they're like, you know, it has no character. It's the gentrification housing, but it's what everyone's doing. They're cheap to build, and they do create a gathering place. So, I mean, it has pros and cons. Just people don't like them because they're viewed as characterless. But that's what I think of in mixed use, and 5/1s is what I think. I'm not really sure. Neighborhood center is more business focused. So it would probably be very friendly to a business like Northwest Custom Apparel because they're not required to have, but then again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself and I truly don't understand the difference between a classic mixed use and the concept of the neighborhood center. But I have no objections to leaving the Berlina property as is, mixed use. And then all of those blue areas that are outlined on here, with the exception of that one orange corner on the Berlina property, that is, let me just make sure I understand, we're changing them from mixed use to urban residential with probably the exception of the Berlina property after this discussion. Is that right?
That's the current proposal.
Okay. Okay. I mean, some of that could be mixed use to me, but I don't know. I'm not gonna, I don't have a real horse in that race, but I agree with the Berlina property staying mixed use. Mickelson property, it sounds like if it was neighborhood center, then light manufacturing is totally okay, but he just didn't understand that. Based on the discussion, was adamant that it stay light manufacturing, which probably neighborhood center is also light manufacturing from my understanding. But you know, if he's super upset for whatever reason, can't hear the message, I don't have a problem with working with him and leaving it LITE manufacturing, whatever we call it. But he's probably not really understanding the intent is that we're still friendly to his business, I'm guessing. In the Hinton property, neighborhood center, great. It's great by me. I think I covered all that. It's my thoughts.
Awesome. It's okay, I'll go ahead and go last. So try and keep it quick. 70th, I'm in complete agreement. It sounds like residential, since there are already houses, access is more off of a residential road. I think the other residents and people that live off that road would be pretty upset if we actually, if a business did start moving in and adding traffic there. So we're good there. Bertolina, the mixed use and urban residential, I think I was one of them that was okay with, as far as I'm concerned, everything that's dark red could stay dark red there as far as mixed use. But I think there was some concerns about sprawling that into, moving it into the residential zone. I'm also okay with her whole parcel being mixed use. Mickelson, I did have a quick question. So is that 3 parcels that are in that M1 zone?
So there's actually, and I apologize, yeah, again, at the time, this made sense to me. Now I'm realizing it would have been helpful for you guys to have a bigger one. Those 3 parcels he all owns, and they're all M1. If you can kind of see to the right, which is also the east, there's actually 2 more little M1 parcels. Those have been recommended to go residential, neighborhood residential, because they have access off of Yuma, and that's all. So, and those, I did not get any comment back. So those are proposed to become residential. It would be just his 3 lots, which all access off of Freeman, that
Okay.
would stay.
So his 3 existing lots are already M1.
Mhm.
If we change the zoning of that, it's still just his 3 lots that would change one way or the other. Okay, given that, then I'm fine with, it doesn't make sense to change a zone of 3 parcels against the parcel owner's recommendation. If it was something where it was more split, that there was 2 or 3 other parcels, then I would like to see options for the other owners. But if he's the single owner of that entire little zone, let's just keep it what works for his business. That said, it does feel like there's a bit of a food island and an opportunity there to put in some sort of little cafe or sandwich shop near there, because I'm sure a lot of the warehouse workers and distribution centers would like to go somewhere that isn't on Pack Ave. But that's a whole other separate conversation. And it sounds like that's kind of what we're trying to do with that neighborhood residential or neighborhood center going north of there. And then the 5th Avenue Residential Neighborhood Center, it sounds like that's a win for the property owner because it gives him more flexibility. So I'm in total support of moving that to neighborhood center. Yeah, and I think for future, as we're getting more into this, it might be nice to have plotted out like a bigger copy of the map. So in case we needed to unroll it and start looking at things, and then maybe just a little table, a handy table for us just to have in the room to remember what current uses are, what future uses are, and keep ourselves straight. But that's just my own little sidebar thing. Yes, going back around, just another round of Red Robin. I always want to call it Red Robin, but round robin. We'll start with Commissioner Johnson and we'll work our way this way.
Okay, thank you. When I look at Freeman Road and 5th Avenue, the question I have is why can't those 2 properties be classified the same? Even, they're both little light manufacturing, even though Jim's is, or Eric's is selling us also. And the other reason is because of the power plant. You know, that even having that residential sort of blows my mind because of the power plant being there. Wherever it's going to go in the future, who knows? But it's not far from the power plant, and also the road of Porter on there. And so I like, sort of like Commissioner Boyle's idea of trying to move in the future, doing a whole area for it's future stuff. It's not saying people have to do it now. You know, it's like, you think about a developer that comes in, we've seen this in other cities, they tell people they,
Point of privilege, Mike, for.
the developers come in, or they say they'll look at an area and say, well, we want this area, and they start trying to buy up all the properties because they know the zoning's there. Somebody may hold out, but eventually everybody will sell at some point. You know, if people move, they get more money from a business than an individual buying a single family in an area that really doesn't look residential specifically in my eyes. I may be wrong, but I think if we had a title that matched both of them, I don't like M1. I don't like the term of M1. You know, I'd rather see something else that complements both of the gentlemen's businesses. And it's not really residential in my eyes. So whatever everybody disagrees on the whole, I will go with. But I don't like M1, never have liked M1. And I don't see us a neighborhood center. And we were doing it of trying to do housing as well, that the state is making us do, so we can protect what used to be single family. And to protect Mr. Hinton, let's don't grandfather him anymore. Let both of them have a symbol that represents businesses that aren't warehouses. But they can be they can be manufacturing, but just call it something else. Light industrial, I don't know, or whatever. And they're both the same. The only difference between the two of them is one has a store to buy for customers. That's the only difference between the two of them. That's my thought. But whatever the group agrees, I will agree.
All right, we will continue the round robin, and then I think if you want to just do a check for consensus of what you heard and any next action with that. We'll
So I never commented really on the 70th Avenue.
after the round.
And I think that we considered this proposed business to have consistency on 99. I think that was the intention of that. And so I never commented before, but I got no problem. It's very challenging with the topography there and being so close to. Nothing's impossible. Dirt can be moved, concrete can be poured, but yeah, it looks very challenging. And along with what Commissioner Johnson was saying is, I think, and also Commissioner Oler was low impact manufacturing is a good name. But I was wondering, I just had one quick question for staff is if the Northwest Custom Apparel became disgruntled to a point that why couldn't they annex into Edgewood? There's not a very big corner there, and everything to the south of them, everything to the east of them is Edgewood. So if he got super pissed, couldn't he request and
Let's don't go.
I don't know, I'm just looking at, because he owns that whole corner, and then there's just a small, if you go to the zoning map, there's just another little smidge there left is, I mean,
You can't leave a city.
We're proud to have him in Milton.
yeah, but couldn't Edgewood request?
No.
All right. That's all I had, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Whalen.
So the question in my mind about page 7, 70th Avenue, the northernmost part of the area highlighted in red, that is the intersection of Highway 99 and Porter Way, correct? So there's some, I just struggle to think about residential going in there. Who's going to want to build a house there, kind of thing? So leaving.
I thought it was on the
Sorry.
other side.
No, so that's 70th, right? Is the northernmost point is 70th.
The western
Or sorry,
side of it is,
Porter.
the north is Porter, well, across, it's Porter, I don't know if it's Porter when you cross Highway 99. It does, okay, so it's Porter on the north, 70th on the west, Highway 99 on the east. So I mean, if it goes neighborhood residential, okay, but I think that's a pretty challenging area, and maybe we look at it next go-round. Because I struggle to think somebody's going to want to build a house there, but maybe higher density is what we can figure out later. or maybe it is part of what's going on in the neighborhood residential zone. And I appreciate also the comment about needing something we can be pointing to. And so in budget discussions, Manager Stallnecker, could we get something where you had an overhead projector or something where you could be pointing with your equipment and we could be looking at a map so we're all on the same visual understanding of things?
Chief has been charged with getting us computer screens so that we can do that. It's just, he doesn't have the urgency that I have, so I just need to keep putting pressure on him.
Or just go old school projectors. There's got to be some of those around still, right? Where you just transparencies and.
Yeah,
Oh, my
and for
God.
the public as well. And the other comment
Sorry, I spoke out of turn.
is just, I think I really value what the property owner has to say about things, but I think when property owners have come in and saying, hey, I don't like what's going on over there, it doesn't seem to carry as much weight. So I try to find that balance where, yeah, we're hearing what people who live there are saying, and think future development as well, and trying to make it work. And I know we're all trying to figure that out, but it's part of the job, right? Thank you.
Absolutely, go for
I've
it.
got nothing more.
Okay.
Yeah, just a few follow-ups. I agree with looking at Fifth Avenue in the future and understanding that we can't really do anything about it now, but note that we want to look at adjusting it in our future work for all the reasons that have already been discussed at length. And I also agree with we do want to balance the needs of the property owner, current property owner, with the reality that that person might not always be there and what happens if they leave.
Okay, perfect. I don't think anything else for me, so I just kind of wanted to do a quick check for consensus based off of what we heard. So looking at the 70th Avenue, it sounds like we're all okay with the idea of that staying or going back to neighborhood residential instead of business. There might be some exploratory of looking off of whatever Porter Road turns into once it crosses 99, what that existing parcel is, and if there's anything that makes sense there. But in general, the consensus is residential is okay on 70th Avenue. Right. Okay, perfect. The Bertolini property and the mixed-use urban residentials, but sounds like there's a consensus that we are okay with her properties staying mixed use instead of going urban residential. What I didn't quite know for sure is if I'm understanding the blue outline is currently mixed use and looking to go urban residential. How do people feel about it moving urban residential versus staying mixed use? It almost sounded like there's a little bit of a split on that. Does anyone have any comments on if the group feels it should go one way or the other?
If I understood Commissioner Whalen, it's the question on that one yellow lot too, and I'm also having a problem. So when we look at the brown, that's now mixed use. And it's the yellow part that is in the urban residential.
Residential moderate density, this is current zoning. Excuse me for interjecting.
No, it says, okay, so
So currently, that yellow spot that's just north of the red line that's still circled in blue is currently
Say orange.
orange. What did I call it?
You said yellow.
Oh,
I
and
get why
there's
you said yellow,
next to-
but
sorry,
There's
mustard.
yellow, so let's say orange.
I see it as orange.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, orange. So that orange spot there, so that is
Current. zoning,
currently residential,
Residential moderate density.
moderate density. But that is a part of a person's property that the majority of their property is in the red.
Okay, so the question is, are we wanting to make all the brown go into that one area and make all of it mixed use?
Mhm.
I don't,
Or is the question that it's staying mixed use? Because I heard you say more than one thing.
So my question was, everything that's in blue
But everything-
with the perimeter right now is looking to go, with the exception of that one little orange splotch, is looking to go from red to orange,
So
correct?
it's going from mixed use to
see,
residential.
that's
Yeah.
confusing.
So that's the proposed plan that went out to the residents, was basically everything in the blue outline, we're going to change the zoning from mixed use to urban residential. So we are going to take away the commercial aspect of it, but increase the density.
So that the only things that would stay mixed use if we don't do this,
Mhm.
right? I mean, would be,
Maybe
I
the-
hate to be blonde tonight, but, all right. The inner part where where the trail, I mean, where the triangle part where lead is, and all along there, that's currently the mixed use. But everything on the other side with the blue, with that orange, all of that will go totally to orange to
Mhm.
become urban residential.
Yeah.
Okay. And why? See, okay.
So this kind of ended up being kind of a mixed bag of questions with this image.
Well, see, what's
So-
really awkward about that is when we look over on downside of this picture, you have this, is that 11th, right there on 11th, one side, you've got the blue without, you've got a part that's in between two
Yeah,
blue lines that
okay.
are mixed.
Yeah, okay. So, staff had a good idea as far as, so it sounds like this is almost a little bit more confusing than the question that was presented. So we can always table this one item to next meeting so that we can really dive into what's being proposed.
And I can bring a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And what the question is. Because
Because when I looked at it, I thought we were trying to bring that orange part into the brown, back into the brown,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's,
I thought.
and I have mixed feelings about not having that mixed use because I love little businesses down there.
Yeah. So, so we'll table that one since it seems like there's more confusion than there is consensus on that one, if that's okay with everyone. Okay. So Mickelson, it sounds like everyone's okay with finding a way for that to stay light manufacturing, but we just maybe want to find a way of rewording it. It sounds like for the property owner's sake, if we can keep the word manufacturing in there somewhere, that would be helpful. There's also a little bit of commentary about, since that's so close to Fife Avenue, is there a way to just kind of make that
Right.
one zone that has something that allows smaller, more affordable housing over shops or some manufacturing, just kind of a keeping everything small scale, but still allowing commercial and light manufacturing and housing, correct?
Yeah, I mean, my thought is neighborhood center gives the property owner more options. They still can have their business, but they also can have residential, which they couldn't have now.
Yeah, okay. So it sounds like we're in consensus on the use of it. It's just we need to maybe retweak the name of it. Yeah, Commissioner Boyle.
Can I make one more comment now that I'm trying to understand the intent? Once the blue circle on the Bertolina, they're just the small circle down at the bottom on the north side of Milton Way. But just keep in mind that our vision over the last, well, since I've been on this commission, has always been this is the town center. So do we want our town center to be all apartments? We're really reducing the town center down. And so just kind of keep that in mind, that that's kind of what this urban residential is going to do. I understand we have to keep numbers up for housing, but that's what this is, that's what this will do. So, thank you.
And I want to say, do you want to comment on, I could have sworn that this proposed change was based off of kind of older feedback, but that we didn't want the
So yeah,
commercial extending into the residential zones, and to keep it back to smaller.
let me bring
but-
back this area. Let me bring back some more detailed stuff so for us to look at it. I think the challenge that we were looking at is, again, the uses, the zoning for that area needs to be, have a better vision. Because right now it just sort of allows everything, which means you sort of get hodgepodge. And I know that some of the conversation was what's working, and what's working is, you know, Dave's and the hair salon and that kind of smaller stuff. So maybe we focus on that and not, and assume it's not going to spread out. But if that, maybe we're feeling like, no, after thinking through, I don't know, as a staff, I don't think I have a strong feeling either way in this one. So it may be that we're like, you know what, if we just need to better define what mixed use is, and maybe we leave it if we want to keep that community mixed. So let me bring back a better definition of what, when we say mixed use, what we're envisioning that would be. And then let me bring back some better maps to really get a feel of what's there and what it could be. And I think that would help that discussion.
Great.
And then just on the last one, I'm hearing two things, and then
Yeah.
is that, you know, is the consensus for the last one to make it neighborhood center? The other thing I'm hearing is maybe, and I was trying to do a quick of what other things are out there. There's a term that we could play with, like urban industry, where that might be a way to kind of do that hybrid of things for maybe both of those properties. So I could also, you know, again, if you, I'm hearing some voices feeling like we're, you know, like kind of that direction. If that's a feeling, I could come back with something and talk to framework, that maybe we come up with something that has industry, which is a slightly less term than industrial, but you throw the urban in, which means you're not wanting giant warehouses, you're wanting something that mixes with people, and maybe we can throw some commercial in there too. So that's what I'm hearing, and if,
Yeah, that's a better summary than I was able to come up with as far as what we were picking apart from everything. So cool. All right, well, we are getting right to time, so it looks like we will table agenda item 6C, that discussion, but we do have that information in the packet, so that'll carry over if anyone wants to get familiar over the next few weeks. We'll get into reports from everyone and then confirm our next meeting. So we'll start with staff reports.
we're, like I said, we already mentioned that Sabitha did put in her notice. She just feels like with her business, the time commitment is just not working, and so she feels very bad and appreciates the opportunity. I will announce that Planning Commissioner Whalen will be reappointed for another term.
Great.
And then we do have next Wednesday at either 9 or 10, I apologize, we will be having a public hearing on the other car wash that is coming to Milton, because we have become coffee shops and car washes.
And pizza places.
And pizza places. It will be up, it's up across the street. It's behind the Shell station and across the street from McDonald's.
There
There-
used to be one.
Yeah, so there'll be a car that's there. So there'll be a public hearing on that. That's it.
Great. Commissioner reports. Start at this side. Anything
I'm
to say?
sorry, I'm just stuck on what you said about car washes and pizza and Mexican restaurants and coffee shops. Nothing.
And gyms.
And gyms. But you can't tell a property owner what to do with their business. It's a free country. I have nothing. I have nothing.
I can't think of anything to report. Sorry, it's been a long day.
I've got nothing.
All right.
I don't have any comment, thank you.
I went to the new pho place in Milton. Finally
Oh,
opened.
that's
Great
right.
service.
Finally opened.
Yeah, the food was good. I was gonna ask if we had talked about last meeting about having a special meeting next month. And I'd just like to know if that's gonna happen, because our next meeting, if I'm not wrong, is May 8th. And just a heads up before then, if we're gonna have the second meeting. Or I guess we can figure it out at the next meeting, but
No, we were, that date works out because we believe we said May
20-something.
20, yes. Whatever's the last Wednesday. So yes, I am anticipating that.
May 29th?
29th.
Okay.
Oh, it's on here.
Oh, it's on me.
Put it in.
I would like to say, I think the roundtable worked excellently tonight.
Oh, good.
I think it worked well because we heard, and then we can say, oh, wait, I'm thinking about what they say and come back. So I think it was very effective, and we've come a long way, people. You know, we're a good group and we communicate well with each other, so I appreciate everybody.
You just like sitting next to me now.
I know.
She's like, I want to keep this.
She's very handsy.
Keep it above the desk.
Yeah. Got my bubble a couple times. It's all right.
All right, so next regular scheduled meeting is May 8th. Just add a note that we will have a special session May 29th. Add it to your calendars. And with that,